Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again to review Season 2 of Free, which is titled Eternal Summer. And what I'll do first is I'll go through the titles as well as the synopsis, and I'll talk a little bit about each of the episode. So, Episode 1 is called Stormy Dive, to which Haruka and his friends have grown after last summer's tournament amidst the hustle of them being disqualified, but of course they still have the chance to come back the following year to basically earn their place. And within this first episode, we do actually catch up with Haru, Makoto, Nagisa, Rei, and of course Rin, who's also at the other school, and what he's doing. As we start to move into episode 2, a stroke of an unexpected meeting, to which the synopsis is the crew ponders of how to attract two new members to the swim club, as Haruka is also called in to help promote the swimming, and to which in this particular episode they go out of their way to perform in front of the school, basically a stage performance to draw new members to the club, and that was actually quite interesting in the story. As we move into episode 3, it's called The Butterfly of Farewell. With the Iwatabi Festival has begun, and Haruka and friends are fired up for a club versus club meeting of sorts, and eventually to which they do catch up with previous members that we've seen in the last series. And of course, there is also a festival that will also take place within this particular season. As we move into episode 4, we have The Promised Somersault's Return. So in this one, they are still preparing for basically the professionals to which they'll be performing in relation to their swimming contest, which will be seen a little bit later on within the series. And whilst this is occurring, we do end up having a bit of a situation to which we get, I think it's this episode or a later episode, to which in one of these episodes that we see that Haru has a bit of a problem in performing in his swimming, and he comes to a bit of a slump. I might be a bit confused with a later episode. So, jumping into the next episode, which is actually an episode that really caught me by surprise, and also how they handled this particular character. It's called A Resolution Heads Up, to which the members of the Iwatobi Swim Club ponder over the cause of Nagisa's odd behaviour, things that are happening around the school, and he ends up asking to stay the night at other swim club members' places, and that catches the audience by surprise. And I also like the way how they do this with the character of Nagisa, because Nagisa in the previous as well as also in this particular series, he comes off as basically very outgoing, very much into sort of like wanting to have as much fun as possible. But in this episode, we actually learn a little bit more about him and his past. And we actually learn that how strict his parents are, and due to their strictness, all he wants to do is just to continue being great at swimming, and like basically swimming to his best. And if it's along with the help of the other club members, they also help to sort of like stand up for him in regards to the situation. We see Haru arrange sort of like with one of the club members, sort of like one of the club bosses, to get sort of like who's in charge of the swim club to intervene. And he does some crazy things in this episode, and you definitely get to see how they help him out, and even help him out in the area of studying, because one of the things that he's sort of like pushed a lot in that we learn is that his parents aren't too impressed with some of his study results recently, including his marks, and they end up going out of their way to help improve his marks. And I really enjoy how, as a relay team, they work together to help him out. So jumping into episode 6, as we move into episode 6, it's called Invincible Prime. On the eve of the prefectural, so the prefectural swimming, Makata resolves himself to breach a certain subject with Haruka, and in this we actually see how Haru helps Makata out in sort of like trying to help a student, to which he's helping basically their coach out, and he sort of like gives him a little bit of advice of sort of like how to try to help that sort of like that new Iwatani swim student out. And then he sort of like thinks back to when he was at a time similar to which this student was in a position, or to which he saw that this student's in a position of like having a fear of the water, but he helps this particular student at the swim club overcome their fear. And that was absolutely fantastic. The next episode is called The Crouching Star of Vindication, where Haru and the boys have trained hard to prepare for this showdown against the Semazuka school. So in this, there's a bit of a competition that has been set up between the schools, and we see that in this competition, Haru is one of those people who is sort of like taking on what's about to happen. And I think it's around these episodes that we slowly start to see the slump with Haru's character. Also, another thing that is brought up within this series is also the setting up of career. So we get basically the career papers and where some of these Iwatani Swim Club members want to take their careers from, where they continue on next. Another thing too that also happened not only in the last season but also this season is that you've got members who are now leaving like their swim clubs, or basically where they are in their swim clubs, so they start to set up someone to take over from where they leave. We also learn that there's also been a member from the Semazuka swim club that has also helped one of the members in relation to the Iwatani swim club to basically improve one of their strokes. So I think it's the breaststroke. Ray actually gets some help to improve his breaststroke. So jumping into episode 8, while Haruka and the boys redouble their training, in the wake of the prefecturals, we have something that takes place in the centers a little bit more on Makoto, and also what he's doing and how he's starting to set up for what's to come. Episode 9, we have the forming of a slump at Semazuka Academy, the hot-blooded practice for and continue for the regional. So this is all getting prepared for towards the end. And yes, this is also around the time we do actually see the slump with Haru. And whilst this is occurring, Rin slowly devises a bit of an idea. So being Rin, just as a bit of a reminder, is someone who used to attend the Iwatari swim club, but now he's at another school, and he now participates for them now. He notices that Haru is in need of some help, but I'll get to that a little bit later when we start to move into the later episodes. Jumping into episode 10, as the tournament continues, Sosuke finally tells Rin how he's passed their years. Now, Sosuke, we learn, is a friend of Rin's, to which Rin is also a friends with like the original club members of the Iwatari Swim Club. And we know that Rei is sort of like new to him, but Rin is sort of like one of the originals of the relay team, and we meet someone that he has met, and to which this character, we learn, prefers to swim on his own instead of swimming as a team. And in this particular time, we get a bit of a flashback between the characters, but also we move back to the present, to which we get a bit of a better understanding between the characters, so between Sosuke and Rin. But we do eventually learn that they do actually respect each other's decisions, but if something were to turn around and they would have, if Rin were to have Sosuke on his team, he would absolutely enjoy it because of how good he's been there for him. So jumping into episode 11, so there's about 2 more episodes left. The Open Turn of Destiny, to which the Iwatari Swim Club continues training. However, there are signs of confusion that keep showing between like some of the members as to what's about to occur and what will happen, and where they will sort of like start to direct their paths in the next steps in their lives. Jumping into episode 12 and 13. Now, this was actually really quite interesting, and I liked how they worked and centered it around Haru and Rin's character. Mainly Haru, because yes, we learned that this character wants to swim so freely, but he still wants to grasp what that freedom is. And it's absolutely great, and it's good in sort of like trying to have not only the audience understand where Haru is coming from, but also where Rin is trying to understand where Haru is coming from. So with episode 12, Rin gets an invitation to Australia. So this is a place that he's actually been to before in the past, and he's got basically 2 tickets to take himself and someone else. And for the person that he chose to take Haru. And whilst this is occurring, we get to see Rin like drop into Australia. We learned that the part of Australia that he goes to is actually in New South Wales. So it's sort of like setting itself around the time of the New South Wales Olympics that we had here in Australia. I think it was in 2000. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But with it, we get to explore like one of the places or one of his friends' places that he got to go to. Not only that, we end up seeing that he makes arrangements at an apartment hotel. And of course, due to his name and that, they sort of confuse him for being a female and wanting basically a single room. And so hence they're sort of like stuck in the single room together, but they still manage to work things out. By the time we move into episode 13, the eternal summer of beginnings, having faced his feelings honestly, at last Haru or Haruko tells Makoto, Nagisa, and Rei that he has decided that he wants to start the push further to actually see the world, like through the world of the Olympics. Now, it's time to jump into the next area, and that is my afterthoughts in regards to this series, in regards to this season. And I must admit, this was absolutely amazing. From the beginning of season 2 to even seeing members or a member or two helping with the actual Iwatabi Swim Club. No doubt that is going to play a part in maybe the next season. And I'm looking forward to watching the next season. But I just don't know how to review the later things in relation to the next season, because by the way things are looking with season 3, we've got Dive to the Future. I don't know what to expect with that, but there's also, 4 parts to season 3, and I'm not too sure how I'm going to get around to reviewing that, because some episodes are way over an hour long, but I'll work that out when I get to it. As for right now, let's talk about this season. Other things that stood out too, and I really got to point this out. Nagisa, as a character that's so fun-loving and outgoing, I never really expected his characters to sort of like go through the strictest of studying and teaching. Through like meeting him in the first season, but there's actually something I need to bring up too about the end of season 2 as well, because they actually honor Nagisa as well in season 2, because without Nagisa sort of like finding the other members, they would, number one, they wouldn't have reunited. That is one thing. They would not have reunited and like begun to swim together as a team. Yes, he's the one who goes under sort of like the strictest of study through his household, but when that changes and you see him like after all that, it just really, really brings to the fact that sometimes the people that you don't expect to play an important part do actually play an important part in your life, no matter where you are in your life. And in this case, it was actually Nagisa. And I sort of like asked a bit of a question on YouTube, and it had to do with like 3 different Nagisas. Now, one thing is, we had like Nagisa, or on the tweet, or on X, whatever F it's called now, I had one Nagisa which is connected to Evangelion, one Nagisa which is connected to Free, and another Nagisa which is connected to Assassination Classroom. Now, one thing I find that they do with these characters is that, yes, all three of these characters are male, right? But we learn for a fact that their names are in fact feminine. But though their names are feminine, they still retain their own masculinity in regards to the character. And you see that with this character. Yes, we do get to see the fun-loving side of Nagisa. And I think that's something that really stood out to me with this character. And I never thought he would have such a big impact in this series. Now, how that will continue in season 3, I got no bloody idea. Of course, we have Haru, to which we learn that he just loves the idea of freedom. Not just freedom for himself, but to be free of his own bonds. And we do get to see that, okay, maybe with some of his some of his thoughts, he's not in like complete freedom. So hence the series title being called Free. So learning some of his own freedoms of himself and breaking out of his own shell in regards to situations, including, for example, leaving Japan and traveling to Australia. That is going out of what he has basically been restricted to. So in that we see, yes, he's free, but he's still restricted to living in Japan. With Makoto, his restrictions, in a way, are much different. Sort of like, where do I want to go from here? He actually learns to basically want to become a teacher. And so hence, he's beginning to stretch and break out of his little shell. In regards to Nagisa, like, one of his restrictions is sort of like his study, right? And he is unable to complete some of the things with his study without the help of others, especially if he wants to get a little bit further in life. Moving into the character of Ray, who is like one of the new people who joined the swim club, we learned that sort of like his restrictions to which he wants to be free of is basically being able to do the particular swim stroke, but improve so much more with it. And we do get that in this season. So hence, we start to understand more of the story of Free. We even learn that one of their close friends, even Rin, has areas where he's a little bit restricted, but even though, yes, he does have some restrictions of a sort, we see it continue in sort of like helping to learn free others. In this case, it's the character of Haru, but he also plays a bit of a part in helping Ray out too, as Ray also asks him some hard questions to try to understand what's something that sort of like caused a bit of a distance between you, and he does get some answers, and that's really good. So now jumping into the area of the finishing off the afterthoughts, it's now time to jump into the area of the racing. For the main characters, I will give an 8.5 out of 10. Supporting characters, absolutely fantastic. I liked how they used them in the series. I wouldn't mind collecting the manga to this series as well, but whether it's actually available in Australia or not, I'm not too sure. For the main the supporting characters, an 8 out of 10. For the soundtrack, an 8 out of 10. For the animation, an 8.5 out of 10. And last but not least, for the story, an 8.5 out of 10. Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.